I think we're going to get started, and hopefully some more folks will join in. Welcome everyone to the Portland Public Schools Building Level Advisory Committee meeting. My name's Aura Russell Better. I'm District 4 school board member, and I'm chairing this committee. I'd love to just jot down who's here. Laura's here. Glad you're here. Sarah and Luke and Tamara's joining. So Tamara, you're joining the committee, right? So you'll be...
Tamara's staff is our assistant director of facilities.
Yes, I remember meeting you. So you'll be joining us, facilities. Yeah. Thank you. So I think the minutes we might just have to hold off because I don't think we have enough people to vote on that. But if you have a chance to just peek at the minutes, they're in the agenda. Those were from our August 25th meeting. And so I'll just kind of introduce briefly what we're talking about tonight, and then I hand it over to our staff. Most of you probably are aware that we had a bit of a hiccup to the start of the school year at Presumpscot and Longfellow, and we're able to get things going the second day of the school year, but just this is a chance to kind of review what caused the delay and just be able to inform everyone about what was going on in those buildings that caused the missing the first day of school for Presumpscot and Longfellow. And then we'll just continue on to an update on the progress in all three of our buildings and have a chance for questions and comments, feedback. So I will hand it over to, should I hand it over to you, Mark, or does Javier want to speak?
No, I'm gonna kick us off.
Okay, great, thanks.
So thank you everybody for being here. Thank you, Aura, for introducing the agenda. So we're going to jump into a little bit of an analysis of what happened at the start of the school year. You know, obviously that was not something that it's not how we wanted to start the school year. For those who don't know, we had to delay the start at Longfellow and Presumpscot by a day. And, you know, and it was very, while that is, in the larger scheme of, what we're doing is, it's not a huge, it's not a huge delay. It caused a significant amount of stress for families, obviously, for staff in particular, because they came back to buildings that, they expected to be at a certain place and they weren't. And I do want to, sort of underscore that these are incredibly complicated projects that are, that involve, like doing these major renovations while the buildings are by and large occupied. Obviously, this wasn't during an occupied time because it was, the work that happened over the summer. But, clearly, the summer is shortened. It's, it's the school district summer, not the seasonal summer. And, up to the last minute, we had kids in school, so things couldn't move and do all of those other things. So these are super complicated projects. And so while I recognize that we need to do better, I also want to just remind everyone that these are not, sort of like we're building a building over there and, we're running school over here. And at some point, we're going to have to move from here to there. So it is important to recognize that the complexity that our team, our architect, our, project managers and, Steve and Tamara and, Terry and our team are, managing, significant complexity. And I don't even want to talk about how complex this is from the, perspective of the folks that are actually running the schools and having to figure out who's moving where, when, and, all of that. So I do think that it's important to acknowledge that this is all happening in a complex, it's a complex set of projects, and they're all happening at the same time. So We have a slide. Mark, are you going to run the slideshow? Yeah. Okay. We have a slide that just talks a little bit about the different roles in a construction project. I'm going to let Mark or Steve walk through those because I'm probably the least qualified person in the Zoom call to explain what each of those roles is. But I will then come back and talk a little bit about what actually happened. But I think it's important for everybody to understand what those roles are in a construction project. So Steve or Mark, or I don't know who's doing this.
Yeah, I can start, and certainly if others have thoughts in covering something that I might have missed or expounding on it, then please feel free. There are three entities, and in projects like this, or those three entities actually have sub parts to them too, in terms of thinking about the players that are involved in overseeing and getting the work done. And so the first is the contractor, who's primarily responsible for three things: that there's a construction scope of work that they need to accomplish, and they have to follow the instructions that we give them in our contract documents. And they have to do it for a price, and they have to do it in a period of time. And so those are the three components that the contractor is responsible for. They're also, part of our instructions to them are to make sure that they do their work in a way that's safe for the folks that use the building or even are near the building. And so there's a lot that's involved in that respect as well. Our role is as the architects is really, there's a couple different components to it. One, as you all know, we've designed the project, and so we wrote those instructions for the contractor, and that's to translate the ideas that we have about what the schools want to be into the actual construction activities. The other component of it is that we act as to administer the contract to the contractor, and we're intended to be a relatively neutral party in that we don't favor either the owner's interest or the contractor's interest, that we administer the contractual obligations of the contractor. And again, that those instructions include not only the work, but also when the work is done. And then we issue also changes that may be required during the construction if there's any additional instructions that are needed to the contractor. The owner, in this case, we have kind of multiple aspects of the owner, but the owner is the city of Portland and the Portland School Department. So those are the components of the owner, and they're responsible. The construction contract is between the owner and the contractor. So they're the two that. Contractor says, I'm going to do this work for you, and the owner says, okay, and we'll pay you this amount of money to do it. And so the owner does have a role in overseeing the contractor too, just because of the very nature that the contractor reports directly, is contracted directly to the owner. The assistance of the owner in this case is brought in a consultant to assist them in their responsibilities, and that's the OPM, which is the owner's project manager, and they help to oversee from the owner's interest the items that the contractor is doing, and for that matter, the architect as well. So they have an oversight role on the project. The owner, there's certain things that the owner also is responsible for that are outside of the responsibility of the contractor, and that includes things in an occupied building, as Superintendent Botana suggested at the beginning. These are buildings that have equipment and furniture that are in them in some of the spaces that the work is being done, or in adjacent spaces, and so there is some aspect of the responsibility of the owner to sort of work in tandem with the contractor to get things done and prepared. So there's a lot of components to that, and thinking about how that translates into oversight of schedules and cleanliness of spaces and getting work done. And so again, I'll pause if Mr. Stilfen or others have other thoughts on those roles and responsibilities. Are there any questions either?
Go ahead, Laura.
I was just wondering, I know that these projects are huge and big and a lot of different moving parts. I'm just wondering about the opening date and knowing that the first day of school date was set. Was that a date that was communicated clearly to all parties? And was it,
Were
things just not ready, or?
Let's slide into that. Are there any questions about the definition and stuff? And then if not, we'll jump into that conversation, Laura, which is really what, this is more just for definitional purposes, since we're going to be talking about some of those issues that you just raised. Any questions about these? I think, let's just move on, Mark, and then if questions come back to this, we can always flip back. So I think there's two primary lessons that came out of this, to your question, Laura. So it's, clearly everybody knew when school was starting, and that was definitely in everybody's line of sight. But, I think one of the things that we've learned is that because of the complexity of so many players involved, one, there wasn't real clarity around who had to make the final decision for when we were done building and, preparing to bring teachers and get the school ready for kids. And so, this was something that, became very obvious to me when, we were doing our debrief and Counselor Dion asked who had to make that call. And I think we all pointed at each other. And so I think, that was very telling that there was lack of clarity around who needed to be watching the bottom line, which is like, okay, we need to start school on September 6th. So that means what in terms of when we need to be done with construction? And so one of the things that also came up in that context is that second bullet, which is that, because we all speak different languages, construction language versus educator language versus, project management and things along those lines, that it wasn't necessarily, we were using different we had different mental models for what needed to be in place. And so where we, the construction folks are focused on getting us a certificate of occupancy. And that's, basically a seal of, from the city, from the inspecting authority saying like, yes, you can bring people back into the building. But, having a certificate of occupancy doesn't necessarily mean that the building is ready for kids to come in the next day. And so in pretty much all of our cases, we had the certificate of occupancy, just before kids were scheduled to come into the building or as teachers were coming into the building. So the idea that, school is ready for learning is really the standard that we need to use going forward in order to not wind up in a situation where we're waiting for an inspection that says you can bring people back into the building. And that is our drop dead. And the drop dead is at the same time as like kids are coming into the building, because it's one thing for cleaning crews to be able to be in the building, for people to be in specific areas starting to fix things, and another thing to actually open the doors for kids. So I think that that's the lessons, the sort of the key issues that we identified as we did the analysis on this. And so then, what is it that we, are going to do or are doing as a result of that? And so, if you can go to the next slide, Mark. So, one is to simplify the oversight process, and to sort of, in this particular case, what we've done is we've removed a layer in that decision making, which is the OPM as it stood. So, I think we terminated our relationship with CHA. It's not in any way, shape, or form blaming CHA for what happened, but in the context of understanding the way to diffuse decision-making process, we thought that it would be better to remove that layer from the process. There are specific functions that CHA or that an owner's rep plays in projects that we are in the process of, replacing in a different way. But, we no longer, and you'll notice that CHA is not at the meeting. They are no longer on contract with the school district for these 3 projects. And then we really wanted to clarify who makes those decisions. And, there shouldn't be the finger pointing and everybody thinking that somebody else makes that call. We make that call. The school district, the owner makes that call. And, so for us, that means we shift to a framework of ready for learning is when, is what we need to be shooting for, and that rests with district staff. So that's with me, ultimately with Terry, our executive director for operations, and the principals at the sites that, understand the complexities of, the interconnections of, if we've got to move these folks out of here, then we need to have this ready for them by the time that we move them there. So going forward, that is that's the way that we're approaching this. And, so that involves, and we're going to start that work in a couple of minutes, sort of looking at the timelines for turning over schools for, from being under construction to being occupied, and making sure that allows enough time so that all of the work that needs to happen under the owner's responsibility, back to the first slide, managing our moving of stuff, getting things ready and primed for welcoming kids back. And I think, the other 2 pieces are directly related to the work of this committee. We need to do a better job of communicating where we are and what's coming next, with school staff and with the broader community, starting with the district committee and with the building level committees, making sure that, that we are, we're not in the situation that we were, where, this kind of like got sprung on everybody. And, many people were finding out, through emails from staff in the building saying like, help, this is not gonna work. And then, I think that we are going to be doing this starting now, which is to build these meetings into more detailed analysis of where we are. And so that, as ambassadors of the project, but also as people who are knowledgeable of the specifics of each of the schools, you're aware of what's being planned and can help us to, if there's, corner that we haven't seen that's going to come up, give us your thoughts and help in avoiding those. So, what we're going to be doing next is, traditionally what we've done in these meetings is to just sort of update you on where construction is. And, there's always a ton of great work to celebrate, but there's also challenges ahead. So we're restructuring these meetings so that they are built around, what has been accomplished, and then what are some of the challenges ahead. And with the BLAC in particular, we want to go school by school and talk about where we are in the phasing and what is the scope of work that is, that is contemplated for the building, and then where we are with the phasing and specifically what are some of the interdependencies, and we're hoping that this group can help us to sort of understand that, and then tackle some of the challenges as well as help us to communicate about it. So I'm going to pause and let you see if you have any questions, and then when we're done with that, or comments, and then when we're done with that, we'll move into that last part, which is walking through each of the projects, looking at the scope of work, looking at what's been accomplished, looking at the scope of work, and looking at the phases ahead.
Opposite of my questions, can I give a praise?
Always.
From the teacher lens, I appreciate that the extra day was given, because I know that if I was in the shoes of any of the staff at Presumpscot or Longfellow, that I would have been feeling a lot of weight on my shoulders to make sure that my classroom was ready for that first day of school. And so I appreciate that the extra day was given to staff so that they weren't expected. I'm sure many teachers put in more hours than the regular contracted day, but I appreciate that they weren't expected to be there hours upon hours upon hours to make sure that the spaces were ready for the students. I know how that can feel as a staff member. So from that perspective, I think that the decision was the right call.
Thanks, Laura. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, so I just had a quick question, which I'm sorry if this was covered. I don't think it was, but I was a little late logging in. So why was Reiki different? And that's really all my question is.
I don't know. The sort of high level, sort of not being in the middle of it, perspective is, in some ways just timing of issues. But, I think that, Mark and Steve, Terry, you might have a, more insightful answer to that.
Yeah, there's a different amount of work that was being done at each of the schools, and the way it worked out. And many of you recall that we had to actually kind of shuffle some of the phasing at the beginning of the projects because of when those projects started. But it just turned out to the point where the scope of work at Reiki fell more comfortably within that constraint of the summer. Presumpscot had a lot of unforeseen circumstances that contributed to some of the challenges as well. There's water line issues that we were dealing with. There's some roof issues that we were dealing with that came up at the end or towards the end of the summer phase of the work. And so there's no single easy answer to say, but most of it again has to do with either unforeseen conditions or the amount of work that was trying to be done in that amount of time.
And I will also go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
I'll just add on Reiki, they worked right up to the last hour, just like the other projects do. They were all faced with the same challenge, and we finished a few hours earlier than they did, essentially. It's just a matter of timing.
So it was just literally the timing worked out that way, no particular reason, and it was able. Okay, and then so I just have a question: did you guys identify a timeline that staff needs to be able? I mean, I know this would be changeable depending on the level of sort of chaos that's in effect, but did you all establish sort of a baseline timeline so that you have that you can write it into the remaining aspects of these projects? I mean, that's what I'm hearing, but I just want to make sure that I'm right in hearing that.
Yes, that's been discussed.
Okay, great.
I think it's important to understand the context of the three projects coming out of the delay in time, not dollars, in the summer slam that we put forward in 3 schools with the 3 contractors. There were many times in the process when challenges were before us that I kept driving them forward and not allowing them to say, I need more time. More time means more money, more delay. So you were balancing that act with these contractors through every phase, realizing that as we approached the 6th, we could make CO. I had mobilized our staff, contractor had hired cleaning staff, re-cleaning because we were retracting in. The specific to Presumpscot was the roof and the line, the water line, very late came in. Cabinets should have been hung. The schedule that I was pushing to was to have it hung. So there's no contractors in the space before teachers came in for training. So we were 24 hours on the slip after replacing a main water line that was 120 years old and roof decking that had been sliced and cut up in prior iterations that weren't found until very late. But the idea that I was sitting there or my team was sitting there oblivious to the needs of the teachers in the schools really isn't true. But the realization of saying, all right, I'm going to give these contractors the delays they've been looking for and are still looking for every week to say I can't make it and put us in a position where they could turn and say, you're not getting into schools for another 2 weeks. Make it October. And then we would deal with that. So there is that process that needs to be looked at where are we going to pay out? But what I want to point out is that the BFOS right now, this summer slam is it. We're not swinging steel. We're not digging foundations. Everything in these projects moving forward, the risk of really reduced to working closely, more closely, listening to the real time frame to easily manipulate areas in the building now to accommodate not having it look like Presumpscot did the day before the 6th on the 5th. So what I'm saying is, yeah, this is an issue to be discussed, but for 24 hours and what we accomplished on these 3 projects in the time frame from the run out of the delay for which we paid a certain amount of money by that schedule back, I made damn sure we got that our dollars worth from what we paid for to get the CO.
And just to clarify, I did not hear anything that made me think that anybody was sitting on their hands, and didn't mean to imply.
Yeah, no, I've thought a lot about this, and my role in this is to, I guess, I just wasn't giving up. I was not going to allow the situation for them to say a roof deck or a water line is not going to get us in there for CO, because I saw that as the goal, as it says in the slide. And I had voices there. Charlie's in the meeting, Terry's in the meeting at Longfellow. They're hearing what's going on. And this is a retrospective look at that 24-hour period. And it has validity. I'm just explaining to you how we approached it with the challenges that we had.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve. That does really help give context how what a delicate balance it is, and helping us understand the pressures involved in that. One day, of course, we don't love to have a day delay, but in the bigger picture, that's a pretty small, a smaller impact than it could have been. So thank you for that. I just quickly wanted to ask how these steps of kind of I really appreciate the work done on this slide here about kind of what are some changes to make to try to improve communication and, to prevent a situation like this, which I understand from Steve saying we're not doing the kind of building pieces that probably would have a huge impact as they did before school started. But I just would love to hear how that lands, because I really feel like these are some great steps, improving communication before transition points, but just would love from community members and staff any feedback about those steps. Okay, good. So, just wanted to see if anybody had any, comments, positive or otherwise. And I'm just pleased with the kind of reflection and coming back and really looking at the possible. Great, thanks, Luke. Things that may come up and just learning from everything along this process. I really appreciate that that way of going about things. So. Okay, it looks like we can probably continue on unless there are any other questions. Okay.
Right. So then I think what we're going to do is, in fact, start with what was in those last bullets, Aura. So I think the reason I didn't, answer that question is because I think we're going to start dealing with, what does the phasing look like, and what are the, timelines that might need to be shifted, what are the dependencies between projects and so on. So I'm hoping, Mark, as you walk through, you can, start maybe with a little bit of the scope for each of the projects, just to refresh everybody's memory on that. Obviously, talk about what's been done, but then, refresh people's memory on the scope, and then let's get into some of the phasing and the dependencies associated with that.
Very good. Yeah, and I think this is far more information than we've done in the past. We as Superintendent Patana said at the beginning, we used to provide, some just what had occurred in the last month in the way of construction, so the committee was brought up to speed. But we're going to go a little bit more in depth in each of the projects, and so. Looking at Longfellow first, what we accomplished during the summer, and we'll see it on the slide here, but it was what we called phase 3, and that was the administration area. It was on the floor plans, you'll see it sort of on the lower right-hand corner of it, but it included the nurses' suite, the OT, PT area, the toilets, staff toilets, the principal's office, the resource room, math intervention, social worker, and what's called an MDF, but it's a IT closet, and so communications closet, and all spaces were fully abated as well. So that was completed this summer. Also the areas that were included as part of the work is what we called phase 4A, and that included the main entrance and the ramp, and call it the office, the main office, the assistant principals, the boys' toilets, food storage, custodial closets, conference room, social worker, speech, the girls' toilets, and the teachers' room. So that's sort of a large bar right across the front of the building on the first level, and then the kindergarten wing and the second floor resource are part of phase 4B, and we'll show you that in a minute here. Ongoing has been the elevator and the addition. So those are the components that are really adding on to the building itself. And so we'll see that in the diagram, and the floor plan diagram here in a minute. And when we say that there are 2 classrooms, and we'll see kind of where the classroom work is being done. But you all recall that in Longfellow, the classrooms really are I want to say a near gut and rebuild, but pretty close to that. So they have all new ceilings and lighting. They have all new floors. They have new casework and instruction technology, and so they really do get a very big overhaul. Lastly, just looking at the timing, the inspection with the city occurred on September 1st. Which gave us a certificate of occupancy, and again we've kind of discussed what that is already, so I won't belabor that. And students returned on the 7th, one day late, and so again a lot of effort on the part of the contractors and a lot of other people to make that schedule, as Mr. Stilfen said. To note here, there were 2 classrooms 101 and 102. That flooring didn't get in on time, and there was some repurposing of what the spaces were going to be used for, and that led to a little bit of shuffling around of spaces. And I know that staff accommodated some of that change as well, but and those have since been completed. So, and this will make a little more sense as we now look at the floor plans in May here, but. We also were clear that we didn't want to just identify what went well and kind of the fact that there is a lot of great work, but there were challenges and will be challenges. And so the identified challenges in the past, and oftentimes we don't, we know that if there's an ongoing item that we haven't resolved yet, but we don't know of all the challenges until we encounter them during the construction. But during the last phase of the work here, we had some changes that occurred during construction. One of them was we did a modification to the layout of that main office area, the counter layout. Staff came in and felt like it could work better if there was a different arrangement of the orientation of the counters, and so those were changed. We also modified a single-use toilet that was in the nurse suite because of structural considerations. The entrance ramp wasn't completed at the start of school, and so I think anyone who saw the side, what is now the main entrance of Longfellow, saw that we had some temporary handrails that were put up, or guardrails that were put up along that along the entrance and ramp, and then also the front door that were replaced as part of the Longfellow project was not it just wasn't received by the contractor in time to put it in place for the start of school. And then, as I mentioned, the two rooms, 101 and 102, there was flooring that was delayed, and that changed the intended use of those spaces. And so those were, again, some challenges that were specific to Longfellow that had to be adjusted with the contractor from the original scope of the work. The phases, so the way this is organized, you can see that the phase 2 is broken up to a series of smaller subphases. And so phase 2C is the elevator addition. And then phase 2D is the addition onto the back of the building. And the lower level is phase 2B. And so in looking at the renovation work, the elevator will be, it's anticipated that will be completed April of 23. So that doesn't have as much of a dependency issue because that is a standalone. Now there is a component of building the access to the elevator that does impact some of the work. But getting the shaft built for the elevator and getting the elevator installed, that is a relatively independent component. Also, the rear of the addition is more independent as well. There's this stair, and then there are 2 learning spaces here, and then the corridor that goes out to the back on this level. And then there's the pre-kindergarten room up above that we'll see in a minute here. So that this piece right here is more independent because it is space that we don't currently have, and it's an addition to the existing building. So there is again a little bit of a impact when we have to interface between the two, but that will go on until October of 2023 next year. And you can see the level of renovation. So this key is also important to understand. So new construction is shown with that lighter green color. Heavy renovation is where we're redoing an entire room. And so that's again where we come close to reconfiguration of the space itself with all new finishes. And then we have very light renovation, which includes systems work in the building itself, but there's really no significant change to the spaces that the work is going into itself. There's no change of finishes and no change of the major layout of the space. And then there's light renovation that includes, in most cases, some level of finish upgrades. So that's on the lowest level.
Can we pause and see if there are any questions? Okay.
Right. Going up a level, so the work that was done that I described on that first slide, you can see in the orange dash areas. Those areas are completed now. So the new, the renovation of the bathrooms, the new layout of the principal and the admin area here, the new security vestibule, and then the new set of stairs and the ramp. And then we've got the series of support service spaces all in this area, as well as the assistant principal. And so going all the way back to the other set of toilets in the teacher's room and the classrooms that have been part of the initial phases. So that work is done. where we're working right now, and 2C again we've talked about, and 2D again is ongoing as well. So in looking at right now, phase 4 is the kindergarten wing, and so that is the zone right here on the first floor, and that is anticipated to finish up at the end of this semester of the school year. So that is projected right now for December of 2022. And that's heavy renovation. So that's the idea. It says light renovation. I guess it's the full renovation of the classroom. So the abatement, the finishes, the ceiling, casework, all of those things are being redone. So and then there's the June to August of next year. So this is the next year's summer. Will be the library and the major circulation through the building, and then the current gym will be renovated as part of that phase of the work. And so that's next year's summer slam, is to really get all of that, so that at the end of next year, this level, with the exception of the addition and the elevator, at the end of next summer will be complete.
Mark, when phase 4B is done now in December, what does that mean for the building? Obviously that space is then becomes available. So what is the sequencing associated with that? Yeah,
so then the shift of the kindergarten students will go back into those spaces. And so this is always about creating, we have a swing space in the portables, and it's always about the movement of students that are displaced from the construction work. And then we do it in series of 3 classrooms at a time. And so we've got students move to the portables, we've got that create the swing space, then we renovate that, and then they move back in. So right now, I don't believe the kindergartens moved out to the portables. I think what we've done is displaced other grades to put them into the portables. And so the kindergarten students, will move back into the kindergarten rooms, and then we'll shift the other students around. What we essentially need to do is then clear out students from the upper level in order to create the opening of space to renovate that. And we'll see that in the next slide, what happens with now getting ready to renovate the next area, the upper level of the building.
And so this is, to me, a good example of, the sort of the dependencies here, right? That, for if December of 22 means that coming back in, after the winter break in January, we expect the kindergarten to be, moved back into those spaces, then all of the other associated moves have to be happening, on schedule that allows for that to occur. So we're going to talk about that now, I think.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point. I don't know, Terry, if you had a comment or...
Javier basically beat me to what I was going to say. That's the tricky part, is those spaces have to be completely ready so we can move the next phase in. And that's where we get hung up, because those spaces have to be ready, cleaned, ready for learning, so that we can move the next group in. So basically what Javier said.
Yeah.
And from a construction standpoint, we're already abated. The bigger risk is in the second floor for abatement and a one-shot time frame down. So again, we're moving past some of the risks that we've associated with this process we're talking about now, but you're identifying it clearly as to the connective tissue, that there's movement out and in, and they need to be ready. But we don't have the same challenges to the risks in construction that we had in the first rounds, because abatement is reduced or done on the first floor, and it's our biggest challenge on the second floor. So it is in flux and motion, but the idea that the children have to be in the classroom is factor to drive to and accomplish without abatement is a tedious, long process. So, than regular work in the classroom.
This is Nicole, and I'm sorry to jump in late here. I didn't realize this meeting was rescheduled for tonight, so I apologize. I think because we're right now the classrooms on the first floor for where the first grade we're supposed to move into are still not finished yet. And so we're actually still kind of one step behind. And so I think people are looking at that because I know we had anticipated them being completed a few weeks ago and they're not done. And so there's some hesitation and there's some nervousness and anxiety about planning people's breaks and when they're going to move and making sure all the pieces are together when we say they're going to be together. Because I just get the feeling I've gotten several emails already about when should I plan to be here to move my classroom. And so the more information we have, knowing that we need a buffer because all of this has been behind would be really helpful.
You're talking about 101 and 102?
Yeah, because right now, as you may know, that yesterday when I talked to Blaine, he said he was hoping that they might move in next week, but wasn't fully sure. And we had originally said a date of 9/21, and then we said a buffer of 10/1. Yeah. So I guess that's kind of my next round of deadlines and looking at, okay, how realistic is when we talk about December, what are we talking about, or January, what are we talking about? Because I don't want people to feel stress of, changing their vacation plans around to move and so on, because, there was some of that over the summer and people were really upset.
Yeah, and I think that certainly one of the takeaways is just that level of communication and monitoring with the contractor as we get closer and closer. But understand your point.
Thank you.
So the second floor is, as we're just talking about, the after the work is done in the kindergarten wing, the next piece will be phase 5, which is starting in January and going until April, and that occurs on this side of the building. Phase 4 are the toilet rooms and resource room and connection to the elevator, and that's ongoing as well. And then the next phase for the summer will be 6A and 6B. And so those are part of the summer work as well. And so that's shown dashed in the common corridor areas. And so the intent is by the end of the summer of next year, then the upper level is done. And the lower level is done, and so the majority of the classrooms are intended to be all back with the again, with the exception of the addition, which will extend a few more months into the fall. So,
Mark, can I interrupt you for a second because I noticed a hand up, but also Luke had a great question in the chat asking what's to keep us from keeping the mobile classrooms when the project is all said and done. So I don't know if that would be for superintendent or Steve.
I mean, it's not budgeted, so that would be the biggest impediment. And like the goal of doing this project was not to wind up with a parking lot filled with portables.
Yes, point taken. And Luke, I'm guessing you were talking specifically about the Longfellow, right? So the budget piece, I guess that's different than the Presumpscot situation.
That makes sense. Thank you. Yeah,
okay.
And I guess I don't know if it's more important to have a parking lot or more space for education, and that seems to be more important. But that the budget part makes sense. I just we're going to have to turn that back into a parking lot, right? All of the work that's gone into the site work for.
That's right. And again, we don't need the space. I mean, right now, enrollment at Longfellow is, well within the existing structure, and the structure is being expanded with that addition. So there will be more square footage in the building as a result of this project. So I don't think that we're going to be short in terms of learning space at Longfellow, but we will be very short on parking space, as anybody who is currently working there can attest to, or parents can attest to, who come on, whenever we have activities and so on.
Cool. Understood. Thanks.
Thank you. And then Laura had a question. Go ahead, Laura.
Nicole mentioned teachers rearranging breaks and everything, and I was just curious, what is there compensation for teachers and or any school staff who, when classrooms are being moved, for those extra hours and time put into physically moving classrooms and reorganizing and resetting up classrooms?
The teacher's contract calls for that, Laura.
Okay.
Honestly, though, I'm just speaking honestly. What happened over Labor Day was that people, it went beyond the pay. It was about people thinking that they were doing one thing and then having to change plans, and also missing professional development because they were having to move. And as a result, it's coming up to October 1st, and I think people still feel like they're at the beginning of the year because it just feels like we're behind. And I think they want to be able, of course they know they have to put time in, but I know people do not want to miss any of their breaks, and I really want to honor that. And so really just trying to think, because we have to do several moves, and so just making sure we're really strategic about making sure I'm setting boundaries for them and saying, no, you will not move during your break, or whatever it is that we assign. I feel like I have to be really clear, or people are going to get really upset.
Okay, we're going to move to the next, which is I don't want to spend too much time, but on this. This is that detailed, those areas where we talked about light gray and dark gray and green and blue. And so this is the whole building upgrades, which are included in all colors, which include the public address system, the network wiring upgrades, clocks, the sprinkler system upgrade, fire alarm system devices and wiring, security cameras, security and access control, ADA signage, and the elevator that we've highlighted. Exterior lighting and electrical outlets, tamper-resistant electrical outlets. So those, when we say that there's some areas that receive work, but you maybe walk into them and not notice that there's much of anything done, this is the whole building upgrades. And then when we talk about the classrooms at Longfellow, as identified, we've got all new flooring, we've got new casework, and then new ceilings with new lighting in those as well. And then in some instances, we've got the mechanical units on the exterior wall have been either renovated or replaced. In most cases, there was work done at the very, very beginning to upgrade the functioning of those systems. So those are the classroom areas, and just a little bit more on the finishes. And so here's the photos of a lot of the work that occurred over the summer. And so you can see that I'll go kind of upper left, and then we'll do the bottom row. So the upper row from left to right, this is a view of the new nurse's office. There's a toilet room to the side right over here. And so there's some new storage and casework and countertop right here. And tall storage, you can see the storage built-ins right here a little bit better. in the nurse area. So then you can see here the corridor at the start of school, and so that's what it, things look like after we've done a full abatement of a lot of the flooring and ceiling as well. You can see that we've got the new rated ceilings for the construction itself, and then the temporary lighting that we have for the construction. We have the exterior. You can see that coming along, the addition, starting to get closed in. It's even further along now, but at that time you can start to see where the walls are all closed in and getting ready to start putting windows into those openings as well. On the lower lower row here, the picture in the lower left is the new social worker's office. The next one is the new set of stairs that come right up at the level of the first floor. It used to be that you came through the set of doors and then up a level. What this allows is for people to come in and circulate at the ramp to get up to this level and then have an accessible pathway into the building. The next one shows a security vestibule and with a transaction window. And so that's a very secure window right there. And then you can also see some of the fire alarm upgrades and that were done as part of the project. And then the new admin area is shown on the lower right-hand corner.
Can we do a question, Mark? It looks like Jeremy's got.
Jeremy, yep.
Yeah, just very quickly. I'm just curious, is that, so when you say on there bullet resistant glass at admin, is that both that big window that we see there and those doors on the right?
These doors are not. What this has, though, the wall itself has a special wall panel that has a ballistic rating to it, as well as the glass itself. And so this provides protection to the admin staff that have the responsibility as being kind of the eyes and ears at the primary point of entry. These doors will be locked, and the issue is that how far do we go at securing? We could harden the whole building, but it would be cost prohibitive to harden every wall and every door in the building.
Yeah, and I understand that. Thank you. I was just curious. I think it's sick that we have to even discuss that, but obviously it's something that's a realistic proposition nowadays. So thank you.
Okay. Reiki. So with Reiki, the phases are a little different. The building configuration is a little bit different, but completed this summer were the completion of the pre-K and the kindergarten rooms with new toilet rooms, and that's on the first floor. So that was a significant completion of work, and then also the installation of the sprinkler and life safety system in the pool and the cafeteria area. So even though we don't have a lot of work over on that side of the building, there is upgrades to the sprinkler system. In the center area of the library a lot of work took place, and so that we enclosed the center area from the rest of the surrounding spaces, and we'll see that in I think in some of the pictures here. And then the construction of the new administrative offices and the quarters on the first floor began, and that's ahead of schedule. And my understanding is actually using the conference room now at Reiki, and that's actually before we've turned over, I think, the full admin area. But and so we've got construction of the separation wall on the first floor is complete, and we'll see where phase 4 construction has begun in a minute here. But the last two items were kind of occupancy was granted verbally on August 17th for the second phase, and September 2nd, and for phase 3, and then we understood or received the notification of that on September 6th for those two phases. Students returned on September 6th as scheduled. So there's a little, again, we've talked a little bit about that. Just different set of circumstances for the move-in at Reiki, and based on the work that was being done there. Steve, you want to add anything? We're going to shift to the, I think, the challenges here in a minute, but.
Yeah, I'll just add that it was a challenging phase because there was a lot of very invasive concrete cutting in the middle of the building. And that really delayed progress in that area because you can't be cutting holes in the middle of the library and then work to do finishes at the same time. So the contractor actually made progress in other areas that weren't expected to be done, like the admin area, really some of the corridor spaces around on the first floor, that we got more done than anticipated because they were looking for work to do while they waited for the concrete work to be complete in the library.
Some of the challenges, we had some duct work, and the duct work is the sheet metal ducts that carry the fresh air throughout the building. And so there's some conflicts with existing structure and some piping that we actually had to lower the ceilings a little bit. We had one of the HVAC units that was set prior to the work of this construction was partially working, and so there's some interfacing with it that had to occur. But that was, and then ongoing right now we've got.
And I want to talk to that.
Please, Steve, go ahead.
It's not outside the contract. We installed it during the pandemic on the roof, 2 units that were going to be in the BFOF renovation. So it was always planned to be in the contract. We installed them during the pandemic. They are working. We have a warranty issue on a bearing, sleeve bearing on the heat wheel. It has been integrated into the front end, which the city uses to control our temperatures and zoning controls. So the HVAC unit is operational.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, part of BFOF, different mechanical contractor. So yeah. Good, excellent point. Yep. And then, like I said, the last item is that there's it's been observed for a period of time now that there's water getting into the building in the area of the plaza, and the speculation was it the wall of windows that look out onto the plaza, or is it a failure somewhere in the different layers that make up the roof itself? And we're still not sure, and we're still doing a forensic investigation to understand as much of that as we can.
So I'll update on that, Mark. There was Maine Roofing did look at that, I think, earlier this week, and they believe it is the membrane around the perimeter. And the next step is they're going to cut open a couple portions of that plaza deck to see it visually, because you can't, there's 2 layers of concrete, we think, there, so you really can't see the membrane until we open it up.
That's great.
And I think that's scheduled to happen next Monday when the kids are out of school, or the Columbus Day Monday when the kids are out of school.
The complication with that is that with water coming into the building, if we have just installed new finishes, we could damage some of the new finishes, and so that's a complicating factor in it. And so I think, or Charles has got his hand up, or.
Yeah, hi, good evening, everyone. So yeah, to follow on from there in the spirit of transparency, keeping everything in front of us, that has to be resolved precisely because of what Mark was saying. We have finished work that can't be completed until those leaks are resolved. They would compromise drywall, they would compromise finished rugs and so on. So that work is ongoing, and I want to put that in front of everyone so that we know where we sit. Okay.
In the context of the project, would that be a contingency cost?
Yeah, that's we don't know the order of magnitude of this at this point in time, but right now that hasn't been included in the contractor scope of work, so that would be additional and would have to come from the contingency. That's a good point, Superintendent.
And then what are the dependencies associated with that? I mean, I heard Charlie, say, like, obviously the concerns about, construction in those particular areas that would be affected. And maybe we'll get into that next when we start looking at the phasing. And Charlie, if you could chime in at that point, what what you see as the potential impacts would be helpful. And I see
Go
Jeremy.
ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, so I'd just like to clarify, when was this leakage discovered?
So yeah, it was early on in our development of the scope of work. There was some leaking known, and we at that time were still trying to understand or determine what the cause of it was. As I said, Jeremy, I think the initial thought is that it occurred around the window wall system, and that sealing the window wall system might resolve the issue. But further evaluation, and as we've seen it during construction, has led us to understand that it's not that. And so, as Steve said, I think the speculation right now is that there's a failure at the roof membrane.
So my that makes sense to me, and I think so. So the leaking was known to exist at an fairly early date in this process, but cause wasn't known, and therefore repair, et cetera, could not be budgeted for in this project. So this is not a part of the project. It's something that was known as a possible issue. Is that right? Yeah, it's not uncommon for a building of this age to exhibit leaking in multiple areas, and sometimes it's a simple fix, like I said, like applying sealant, and other times it might be determined to be even more severe than simply sealing up joints in different building systems. So, and sometimes repairing a membrane also isn't that significant. Sometimes it can be more significant issue. So it takes time to and bringing in people who can cut an opening into a roof to determine what's really going on. So with respect to the budget, it was known that this was going to be looked at, but not how much it would cost or what it would require to fix. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Thank you.
In some history on it, so as I understand this, there's no plans on this. There's no history other than verbal. Is that when it was originally 18 years ago, when they put the bridge from Clark Street to Brackett Street, you could walk over that concrete partition was then overlaid with the cement we see there now. And leaking has been an issue for well before my tenure here, Charlie's or any of ours. I think it's been going on for a while. It's had Maine Roofing has plugged it, caulked it, done certain things to it, mitigated it, pushed it around the building. Now with the exposure of the new construction to the new, to the old, it's showing over the storefront where it had been and then wasn't, and repairs were made and so forth. So now forensically, we're going to go in there and find out what's failed. And now it's part of the change order process for the project.
Mm-hmm. And I know that nobody has a crystal ball on this, but I am cognizant of the fact that we just, reduced the contingency at Reiki for the remainder of the project to, a significantly smaller amount than what it originally was because of the Longfellow overruns. And so is it reasonable to expect that we would be able to confront the addition, the fix that we're, likely to see here with what's left in the contingency and still meet our contingency expectations?
Yeah, I think it depends on what the repair is, and I'm not sure that we know that yet. So if it means that we have to tear back layers of the concrete deck and apply just new insulation and membrane, that would be one cost. If we put down a different type of system on the roof, that could be another. And then if it means just simply putting a new membrane on top of the roof, that would be even less costly. So there are multiple potential cost options in terms of even thinking about what the repair is.
Hi, Charlie.
Thank you. So just to put a time frame on this so we understand, that forensic work has begun already. and we'll be they'll be cutting out parts to forensically identify up there just exactly the extent of those leaks and what steps we need to take in order to make sure that the building is not leaking after its completion date, which doesn't make any sense to have a building that leaks after it's been renovated. We all know that. The only way to answer your question, Superintendent, about the impact on phasing is that needs to be resolved before on the second floor, which I believe might be phase 6 maybe, or phase 7. So
Can we start going into there we go.
Yeah, gotcha. So, I defer to the other guys, but what we're talking about here is this phase, the carpeting and the drywall. There we go. That will be directly impacted by leaking there, and that has to be resolved before that phase is truly completed.
The other big risk is on the first floor, the occupational therapy room. That'll get directly impacted because that's where it leaks the worst. And that work was supposed to be done this summer, and we held off knowing that it was going to get damaged.
So we need to find out from Maine Roofing, who is the subcontractor for Hardy Pond, what the forensics shows, and make a determination of how the repair will go. It could be contrasted to dollars cost to value. It could be just putting a temporary roof over that area that drains the rain and the weather off of that roof from going down through the membrane on the deck. But we won't know that until we get forensics on the deck.
Did you have a question?
And
so typically with a roof membrane, if you're finding leaking, at some point it's kind of compromised already, right? Like, it probably makes sense to replace that membrane for the longevity of this project.
Yeah, a typical membrane, or a rubber membrane will last 20 years and seldom more than that. And even at that point, you start to get some repairs that are oftentimes needed. This one's a little more complicated in the number of layers that were built up to make the roof itself, and so that's why we'll actually kind of understand a little bit more as we start to peel back some of those layers and find out where the barrier, the weather barrier, or the rain barrier really is failing. As Steve, I think, mentioned, there's layers of concrete. We have the concrete from the waffle slab, and then we've got an additional layer of concrete on top of that. And so sandwiched in there, we also have insulation.
Yeah, we actually think we have more than Mark. We've got the waffle slab, the original membrane, the original topping slab, then possibly a new membrane that was added 18 years ago, and then another topping slab on top of that. So we've got a sandwich of unknown stuff that we need to cut through to find out what's there, because there's no record of it.
And capping it isn't an option. Just throwing another layer on.
no, I think capping it might be, but we need to find out what it's going to take, how much we can afford to pull and put into this now, how much we can, if we cap it, is it less expensive than pick it up in CIP and do it outside of these dollars in the VFOF? But it's got to be dried up, and we have to understand how we dry it up, and we have to have a system that's going to be durable and long-lasting and watertight. So it's hard to answer the question until we get some forensics and we get some numbers and know what we're looking at and what our options might be to get to a dry condition. Because Charlie's absolutely right, and every one of us agree that we shouldn't have water coming into any of our school buildings, and especially in light of a renovation. But it's not a full renovation of the entire footprint in the school and the others. So
yeah, understood. I also understand how little it takes for water to get into a roof like that. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. It may be through with the forensics that a much a more reasonable, expensive repair will do exactly what I said, a durable and long-lasting seal and no water. But until we see it, we won't know. But I do know in the time that I've been here, we have had Maine Roofing, Phil Darling's group, at this school at least 7 times and making repairs. We're not just standing there, although it looks like it, the buckets look like memorials, but we have put a lot of money into trying to stop it. And now with the renovation, is the time to really find out how to go about this.
Yeah, and I'll add that up until now, if the plaza leaked, it was fairly easy to mop it up and move on. But now with the new renovations, there's a lot of drywall and acoustical ceiling tile and stuff like that that really is going to get damaged and cause a real problem when it gets wet, where the concrete and the brick was a lot more forgiving.
So I want to let you speak, Jeremy, but I'm also aware we're getting really close to 7:30, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time and have time to get to the rest of the agenda and talk about Presumpscot. So do you think you could do a quick question, Jeremy, or comment?
I probably need 45 seconds. So
Okay.
To summarize, we have to identify the nature of the problem, assess how much it's going to cost to repair and what the most effective repair is going to be, then find out whether that's in the contingency or not. And it's either it's going to have an effect on this project because it affects other things that are definitely a part of this project. So regardless of whether this project can pay for it, it will affect this project. Is that the situation we're in?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, and the addressing of it impacts other aspects of this, as you said, Jeremy. So absolutely. That's why I think we're all working to figure out what the solution needs to be as fast as we can.
Absolutely. Thank you.
That synopsis, that's helpful. Okay, Mark.
So this is, again, just quickly a diagram of work completed in the orange. And then right now, we're looking at phase 4, which is the area on the bottom of the plan right here. As discussed, OTPT is not being worked on right now until we resolve the issue of what's going on. And then the area that is intended for next summer is really completing the work around the central area of the library. So that's, but like I said, some of this has already occurred. So, and that's so at the completion of next year, next summer, I should say, the first level is intended to be primarily complete. And then up on the upper area, we've done the one of the very first phases we did was the orange area shown here. And so beginning in January of next year will be the zone right in this area. Again, understanding we have a little bit of interface with the roof and the windows in this zone right here. Also following that will be the work next summer in this area right here. And then the very, very last area is the art and music up in this area right here. So that's the current phasing planning that the contractor is following. So we do have a similar case where we're talking about with Longfellow, where we've got swing spaces that we're moving students to and from, and so there's considerations to make sure that we hit these dates so that we can then move people in a timely fashion because they occur around the breaks between the 2 semesters.
Go ahead, Charlie.
And just to wrap that up, so everyone understands phase 4, did a walkthrough today. Phase 4 is on target, looking good, and should be completed in time.
Thank you, Charles. So we're going to kind of move along here. So the views, you can see the view from the library from the 2nd floor. So the new ceilings installed. And we can see a lot of the new flooring and a lot of new finishes installed in the central open space. Same space from the lower area. Also upgrades around the stairs, the stair guardrails replaced, and finishes on the treads and risers as well. Seeing into the new admin space. And so this is the corner window that looks out onto the new entrance. So that eyes onto folks coming and going. And then we've got office space, and you can see down in that lower central library, we also have an amphitheater space. So some of those stairs were converted into these gathering spots. We actually created those. You can see the finishes around the new finishes around the stairs right here, and a little nook that was created inside of that. And you can see some of the openings in the walls that surround the central opening as well. If you come into the building now, this is the reception counter as you approach that admin area. And then we also have a view of the kindergarten classrooms now all set up with desks and essentially their classrooms in Reiki, which is exciting. So. And then moving to Presumpscot, the work that was done this summer was a tremendous amount of work in the existing building. And so in addition to having work ongoing with the additions, there was a lot of work that included electrical wiring in the building, the sprinkler system, which is new to the building. We've got new door hardware, and the toilets were redone. We've got flooring that was done in the hallways. And then we had the reconfiguration of the 5th grade classroom that had a small room adjacent to it. And so that ELL room was reconfigured. The main entry and admin area is ongoing, and we understand that's on schedule for completion in October here. So anyone who's come up to the building and seen the new entrance, it adds a new level of finish every day. So it's pretty exciting to see that. Ongoing is the addition, and we'll see that in a minute here. Also, again, in addition to the entrance, there's a reconfiguration of some of the spaces, the teacher's room, some toilets, in the area around the reconfigured entrance, and that work is ongoing as well. Occupancy for Presumpscot was verbally granted on September 1st. Certificate of occupancy is not required for this phase of construction, just because the building has always been occupied. But in terms of getting the school ready, the difference between construction completion and learning ready, as we've kind of talked about, push things past the anticipated start of school by a day. The challenges, as we've talked about, there's 2 primary challenges that we uncovered during the summer work. One of them, as Steve Stiffen has already mentioned, was a old water line that not only did it require fixing it, but then there was multiple tests that required to make sure that the water was good quality, and so that delayed construction activity. And then there was also damage to the roof that was done in the past, and so a fix had to be quickly done for that. And until the fix was made, we had to actually cordon off areas of the building until the fix could be made. So those were definitely some challenges that we faced. Angie, you probably have other challenges that you may have been aware of, but any update to what was just mentioned, Angie?
No, I think things are coming along quite well at this point. The 1-day delay, I think, made everyone super happy, and we got in, and I've walked around the building. I'm giving tours, by the way, anyone wants one person at a time. And it looks promising. It definitely sounds like we're going to get some offices back on the 15th. The front area probably right around November 15th. So that in itself is just going to make a huge difference. And we got staff bathrooms back. I think it was last week. We occupied them without permission, and so that was great.
No. Great Falls. Darren called me up and said, how do I stop this principal from ripping the sign off the bathroom door? I said, you don't. They're open for business. So you had permission.
So the work that was completed is shown in orange, and work that was that is ongoing that we talked about. Here's the there'll be some offices as Principal Taylor suggested that will come online here, but this whole new entrance area looks like just a little bit past October now, and so the workroom and toilet rooms are online. Sounds like, which is always exciting. Like we were asked 2 weeks ago, are those ready, or will they be ready soon? So pretty exciting, and it's also really exciting to walk through the addition, which is more and more complete every day, and a pretty exciting learning space. And so that's coming along nicely, and that will be ongoing to the end of the year. And so again, a lot of construction activity occurring right here, right now. That's where the majority of it is concentrated.
So, Mark, Laura just had a question in the chat. Will Presumpscot need a certificate of occupancy once the front office area is done?
Yes, those areas will need one. Correct. That's a good point, Laura.
Laura's question, or read it. So, so is there a timing around that? Like once it's complete, like what the timing process? That's my additional question. After.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point too. And I think again, from lessons learned, we'll look at completion of that from the contractor's perspective, and understanding that there's going to need to be quite a bit of a setup in these spaces. So.
Okay, thank you.
This is just the scope, and it largely mirrors some of the discussion that we had at some of the other schools with the whole building upgrades. So those areas that were in orange that identified in the existing building, while the classrooms themselves didn't receive a lot of noticeable upgrades, the PA system in the building was upgraded, new data wiring, clocks, fires, sprinkler system, fire alarms, security cameras, security and access control, ADA, signage. So all those same building-wide systems that we talked about in Longfellow are also being made to Presumpscot. The one big one, again, is the fire sprinkler system. The building now has that level of protection, which is critically important. A lot of the areas that had very light renovation were the classrooms themselves that, in addition to having those upgrades that are being done throughout the building, they had upgrades to the teaching walls. So that's, but there wasn't a lot of work in those classrooms. So notably absent are finish upgrades. So unlike Longfellow, which the scope was really intended to concentrate on the classrooms and provide a lot of new finishes, Presumpscot, most of the effort and money went to the addition itself. So it's one of the fundamental differences in the project. View of the renovated quarters, those existing quarters right there. So they're nicely upgraded with the flooring. And you can see that at that time, the front of the building, it's again, even moved quite a bit beyond this at this point in time. Here's one of the ELL rooms that was renovated from that portion where the 5th grade classroom was. The renovated restrooms, the toilet rooms with new partitions and fixtures. That's the other side of where the ELL classroom was with the 5th grade, and a couple more shots of different perspectives of that ELL room.
Go ahead, Laura.
Sorry, Mark, can you go back one slide? Are all of the classrooms at Presumpscot getting 2 whiteboards and a projector? Is that what that was saying?
That was the original scope. And I don't know if we were able to accommodate every classroom with the same level of fit up, but that was our original intention when we began the project.
Yes, every classroom did get, Laura, I guess side by side 2 whiteboards, and throw a projector. Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Great.
But that's it. Just to be, you know what I mean? Yeah. That was it. Right. It's light.
Very quickly, contingency update. I know we're at that time. So the last time I think we met, We talked about the shift of contingency funds to cover what was projected to be the shortfall for Longfellow. That was recommended and approved by the school board in September. And so right now, this shot right here is where our current fund balances were at the last requisition, which this was when the slides were put together. This was the end of August, so the August requisition, and that's the amount that the contractor has been paid for the changes. So the original for Longfellow was $554,000. We increased it to $961. We have used $453, so there's a $500,000 remaining in Longfellow. Reiki, we started with 584. We reduced it by 178,000. So the revised contingency amount was $400,000. As of the end of August, we had used 75,000. So leaving us with 330,000 remaining in the contingency for Reiki. And then for Presumpscot, we started with 729,000. We transferred 227,000 over to the Longfellow. So our revised contingency amount was 500,000. We've spent 137,000 to date, leaving us with a balance of 364,000. So that kind of gives us an update. We've got about 3 months to go here on Presumpscot. And with that, our next meeting is scheduled for October 27th. So.
Great. Thank you so much, Mark. And look at that. With all of that we went through in this meeting, we're only 4 minutes over. That's incredible. I just want to offer an enormous thank you to the team here, the district staff and Harriman, and also just really particularly want all the school communities to hear a heartfelt thank you. Really just the staff, Reiki, Longfellow, and Presumpscot, just the amount of flexibility and resilience staff has had to show throughout this process is just remarkable. And just wanted to give the feedback that families from Longfellow and Presumpscot shared with me that, you know, even after the delay, their first day of school, the kids really just felt welcomed, and that it was just a regular first day of school. That really just speaks to the professionalism of our staff, that they just, with all of the craziness they'd been dealing with, that they were able to make the beginning of school really just a wonderful and normal first day of the school year for kids. So I'm just so appreciative of all that staff does every day and during the chaos that they're faced with in their buildings. So please pass that thank you on to your staff, that we see what you do every day, and it's going to be worth it, where these buildings are really coming together. It's so exciting. I can't wait to get tours of the buildings, and it's in sight. So thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. Would anyone like to have us end the meeting? Would anyone like to have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Please. Is that you, Laura? I see your
Laura
hand.
moved.
Laura moved. She moved her hand. There she goes. Anyone second? I'm gonna have to.
Jeremy, I think we need you to second.
Jeremy's gonna.
I second the motion.
Yeah. All right. So, with all hands, we'll adjourn at 7:36. Thank you so much, everybody, and we'll see you next month. Take care.